All right, you know that sound. The Unfiltered Band means yes, another episode of Unfiltered. This one officially go down as episode 240. You can get us 24/7, 365, Unfiltered Revolution, Apple, Spotify, everywhere you get your pod. Twitter, the artist formerly known as X, if you will, and on YouTube, where if you jump in at Casey Stern and go up top, you can get in to the bio, get on the YouTube channel, watch now 239 into 240 episodes deep. And thank you to the Unfiltered Band for being with us, and thank you for being back with us, to a longtime friend, longtime teammate, and an architect in the front. And now you can find him all week long and on the weekend on Sunday in the front office on MLB Network Radio. Of course, Power Alley on a daily basis there. And trying to bring more power than the Mets lineup has when he is on the lineup constantly talking about the Mets, among other things. Our guy, Jim Duquette. Duke, appreciate this, buddy. How are you this morning?
Happy New Year, Case. Everything is going well, with the exception of having to watch an off season of the Mets trying to improve their team and be competitive. Everything else has been good.
Yeah. Yeah, I want to talk about it and get into that. I got to ask you this just because you just did it, and I don't think this is a faux pas. But what is the New Year rule? See, I believe if you know somebody a long time, or you usually see them often, and you haven't seen them yet this year, it kind of goes past the first few days. Is there normally a cutoff for you? Like, what is, like, I say this, by the way. There's a Christmas tree my kids haven't let me take down yet that's in the background. So I break all the rules. But
Right.
What's the rule on Happy New Year for you?
Yes, and a Christmas tree, by the way, that in our house, we have two. One of them stays up into the summer for some reason. I don't know why. And so
really?
That's a whole different
with
story.
The lights and ornaments? With
then
the ornaments, the whole deal.
It turns to Easter eggs, and then it's got, spring thing. So
okay.
Anyway,
it's a theme tree. It's a theme tree. Okay.
Yes,
I got you.
Just getting along at this point. That's the way it operates. I feel, I kind of feel like there's this arbitrary date, maybe the middle of the month of January where it might still be acceptable, especially if you haven't talked to them yet or whatever. But man, much later than that. We're on to 2024. I don't know. What about you? Do you have do you have a hard deadline? What do you?
I don't have a hard deadline. I think there's that once, the first time you see them, you kind of get it out of the way. I think it can't hit February. That's the only rule. Like, if you're at Groundhog Day and you're still saying Happy New Year, there's something wrong with you. Not that there's anything wrong with having a tree that's still up or Easter eggs on yours. Nothing wrong with the fact that at least we'll get a chance to discuss a number of things. I want to hit the Mets and get into all that's gone on with them. What's about the O's close to home near you? I may hit some Ravens too, just to ask you, because I know you're a big fan, and they are. I mean, this is as close as it's been since the last time when you did get there and you killed my Giants.
Yeah.
At least you didn't shut us out, even though the defense didn't allow any points, thanks to Ron Dixon with that kick return.
Right.
Want to get into a number of things in free agency, but we do always say we're presented by BetOnline, your number one source for all your sports betting needs, latest odds, lines, matchup reports, basketball, baseball, boxing, golf, football, everything you got. They are the fastest and easiest way for your wagers, live betting, favorite casino and card games right from your phone. So get over to the website now, use your mobile device, and sign up today. And remember to use the promo code BELIEVE. It's BLEAV. It'll get you a 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. It is BetOnline, where the game starts. And I start here. We know Met fans are not happy. We know Met fans don't think it's good enough. But are the Mets doing the right thing in the way that they've handled things so far this offseason?
Well, I mean, the right thing, we know that there's still time left before spring training to improve the team. And it kind of looks like they're going to do that. We don't know for sure. So it's still kind of an incomplete when you look at what they've done so far. But what I don't like is the messaging. Okay. I don't think that that's the right thing. When you're, again, this is all by the expectations that have been created already under the new ownership. So it's we want to be like the Dodgers. We want to be, you're competing with the headlines in New York, like this, which has always been there. And when you sit there and say, well, we want to be competitive this year, but it's not, the goal isn't to try to win the World Series. I don't even hear them say right now, get to the postseason. Like those are just layup goals that you expect of large market clubs, teams like the Mets that are charging the exorbitant prices that they are for their fan base, and the rabid fan base itself. Like you have minimum standard of what you expect from year to year, and it shouldn't be giving up a season, which is they're not really saying that because they use the word be competitive, but it's just a shade above mediocre for me. The messaging, and it's the wrong message, and I'm a little surprised that David Stearns, their new president of baseball operations, is continued to kind of foster that message without, I don't think, too much clarity. I think there needs to be more clarity. You're trying to get to the postseason, and right now you look at some of the projections. Like you use the projections at this time of the year as like a guideline. Like where are they deficient? Where are they? Look, what are the projections look at like they're stronger? Just so that when we eyeball it ourselves, and you and I both been in the game for a long time, we do our own evaluations. Like, all right, does it match how I'm feeling about the team? And they're deficient still in the rotation. They're deficient still in the offense, and they're deficient, in my opinion, in the bullpen. Even though the projections look good, that's because of they're anticipating a healthy Edwin Diaz for a full year, and you can't count on that because he missed the entire season with the knee surgery. So there's a lot of flaws, in these projections. By the way, they may end up out kicking what the projections look like at the end of the year and exceeding that. But it's not. It doesn't look kind on them at the moment. Middle of the pack. They shouldn't be in that middle of the pack. This is a team in New York that has all of the resources to go out and try to win every single year. And I think that's what the Dodgers have done. Go look at their track record. If you're comparing yourself to the Dodgers, I don't recall, you helped me in the last dozen years.
Oh, no. God, come on.
Going back to Ned Colletti as a GM, have they ever said, we just want to be competitive this year? I don't think I've ever heard them say that.
No, I here's the thing, and I think I'm getting soft in my old age in some ways as a Met fan. The analyst in me tells you this. Let's start here. They're not a good team. Okay, this is not a good team, not a good roster. The depth in the bullpen's not nearly deep enough. Your point, and I think that's huge because if you're not going to be able to blow people away offensively, and your rotation's going to have a lot of guys who can't go deep into games, that bullpen's got to be the strength of your team, and it's definitely not, especially in a depth standpoint. It's not. Where look, Manaea may start as a starter, but he was in the relief end of things more last year than he was a starter, right? So if you've got I love the Manaea move. Excuse me. If you're a really good team, he's great because back of your rotation and in that bullpen, he's like an advanced version, maybe in a left-handed of what Trevor Williams gave you a couple of years ago, right? But they need him to be way more than that. I will say this, though. I am okay with the fact that David Stearns came in and clearly behind the scenes has said, we're not good enough. And I'm not going to let us do what you just did a couple of years ago and just put money on the books. We got to figure out how to do it the right way. But to your point, it's difficult to do that in New York. So I ask you, this is a conversation we've had and everybody's had for I don't know how many years in sports in New York. Can you build a team in New York and not jump, Duke? Can you take the time to do what they're doing? Because look, tell me I'm wrong. Manaea, they hope, and he's going to opt out after the year. He pitches well. They deal him at the deadline for something, right? You're always looking to pull out. I'll go back to your Orioles. You're always looking to pull out the Scott Feldman deal as a fifth starter to give you Arrieta and Strop, right? Where you've got those rentals. How can you build slowly in New York? Is it possible?
It is. I think here's how I think it's possible. And again, I'm going to use the Dodgers. I hate always using the Dodgers, but the Mets are the ones who use this comparison. So I'm going to stay with it because, we watch them. And I think Andrew Friedman's one of the best evaluators and front office guys in the sport. Like, I don't think there's a guy that's second, there are other good ones, but Friedman's the best. And I think Stearns, we'll see, with money, how that turns out. Like he's been very good in Milwaukee. So So I don't want to like he, and I believe that, he's really bright. He understands New York. He's from New York, all that. So there's a lot of factors that I think, are going to be good long-term. But with what the Dodgers did, they many times had a player development system that was churning out quality, top-notch players. If you want to go back to when Corey Seager was in the minor leagues and Julio Urias, starting there, right? And then each year they have generated more and more prospect. Walker Buehler is obviously another one that comes to mind that was impactful. They have James Outman now, who's in one of the finalists for Rookie of the Year. Every single year, they are turning out guys, developing them, getting them ready to help at the major league level, and then inserting them into the major league roster. And what they do is they support that with veteran type players that are quality major leaguers that help you win and help kind of support the young players as they come up at the major league level. And that's what they could be doing right now with the Mets. And maybe they will. Maybe at the end of this winter, we sit there and say, oh, they found a 1-year stopgap in left field. They found a potential 1-year guy at third base to help in the growth with Brett Beatty. And hopefully we see a better Brett Beatty in 2024. Like little things like that I hope we'll see improvements that fill in the gaps where they're really, I think, weak. You mentioned the bullpen, another arm or two. He spent a lot of time, David Stearns did, grabbing, what will hopefully be undervalued arms, relief arms, and so that depth, which they were lacking last year. You need these days, you need about 20 pitchers. You need, 8 in the minor leagues, 8 guys that have some kind of ability to have some kind of major league track record, that are on minor league deals that can maybe sit there in AAA for a little bit, or we've got guys that are on options. And so I think there's ways to do it. And he's tried doing that, in some areas. And so maybe that bullpen, and by the way, David Stearns built very good bullpens in Milwaukee year after year after year. And he had a very good manager, by the way, one of the best in the sport, and that kind of gets into that, okay, you have a rookie manager too, that has to kind of maneuver through all of this. And that's the other factor, in this equation about them being competitive or not. So I think you can go back to your overall general question. The one thing I will say that is, and I am hopeful that their development system is going to be better moving forward. They have had a lot of turnover behind the scenes, guys who oversee their minor leagues. That Andy Green now is running their minor leagues, and I think he's one of the great baseball minds. And he and a couple of the current front office guys, I think, together are going to create that top-notch quality player development system that it's been a little rocky over the last 5 or 6 years. And I think consequently, that's why you've seen a couple of years of guys that they were playing up as going to be impactful at the major league level, and they haven't quite been there. I think that's a deficient minor league system more than anything else currently. And I feel like that's another area that they started to fix under Billy Epler and now will continue with Stearns.
I want to do one more before we move on from the Mets. Team now, and I say, look, Brett Beatty, to me, chance to be a nice, decent player. I don't think he's an impact guy. Vientos, holes in his swing, to me, you're almost better off foraying him and letting him build value and moving him, I think. And when I look at all of that, Justin Turner, that name just seems to just fit in every way for me. Seeing what he does, Duke, the example he sets, the fact that you can use him a little bit in the infield in addition to a DH bat, the kind of at-bats he gives and what that sets up for your lineup. We saw that for so many years with the Dodgers, where you and I were covering many playoff series year after year, and he was the toughest out for those guys in October, regardless of not being the biggest name. What about Turner as a fit and kind of see in general when you look at some of the names, what kind of direction do you see for the rest of the offseason for them?
See, I think Turner is a great fit. He fits all of those criteria. The only issue that I worry about with Justin is at 39 years old, how much could he really play at third? So let's just play into the GM aspect of this for a second. Say, okay, Beatty struggles out of the gate, and now you need a third baseman. Can Turner really give you 40, 50 games at that position every single day? Alex Cora would come on with me last year on occasion, and we would talk a lot about Turner and his impact on the Red Sox, his leadership ability, all that. He's like, the hardest part with JT is convincing him that he shouldn't be playing in the field. His mind says he should be in the field, but his body doesn't, and so that, but I think that they do have a DH, plenty of DH spots,
sure,
at bats
absolutely.
there. The DH, they're really deficient there, and he could play some second, he could play some third, he could play even some first. You want to get Pete off his feet for a little bit. So I think the point is there's room for Turner and another guy, maybe like I'm not even suggesting Chapman. What about a Gio Urshela who is willing to play a bench role, catches the ball there at third base, and can handle the position as a fallback? That's what he was in Anaheim for Rendon. When Rendon gets injured, you got a guy who is a credible guy who can play. Yeah, is he perfect? No, but you're trying to save those at bats for hopefully Beatty's future development. So we'll see. I agree with you. By the way, Beatty has a lot of holes in his swing that he needs to make adjustments to. Same thing with Vientos. And I think their best third baseman, unfortunately, is injured right now in Mauricio.
Agreed.
Like he's either third or second for me, in the future.
Yep. And I think that obviously hurt them, and maybe even put them more in a position of kind of, it looks like a stopgap season. Let's put everything on pause and let's get to 2025. We'll see. Clearly, the Orioles, and I want to go there next because obviously the Orioles had such an amazing year. I know the end of it doesn't work out the way that they want. I know you don't go deep in the post as you want. How much of it more, and how surprised that see you at the end of it to see the level of success that they had?
Oh my goodness! At the end of that, 100 wins. I mean, that is in the American League East. On top of that, that is impressive.
It's amazing. Yeah, thank you.
Right? I mean, incredible season that they had. And yeah, it was disappointment to get bounced in that first round. You know what? There's a lot of really good teams. A couple of them that had 100 wins that also didn't get out of the first round of the playoffs too. Hello, Atlanta, right? The Dodgers were bounced early. Like teams that had excellent seasons. So maybe there's a flaw.
Yep.
Yeah, maybe there's a flaw in the postseason with all those days off. We'll have to wait and see. We need more of a track record before we can really say that. But yeah, there's teams that were sitting around for 4 days. It didn't fare well. Houston was good. Houston got to where they always seem to be, right? Steps away from the World Series again, and they had that time out too. But back to your point on the Orioles, like I think what was so unexpected was they had flaws in their starting rotation at the beginning of the season. And they went out and acquired a guy that didn't really pitch out that well for them, the lefty Cole Irvin. They traded for him from the A's, and he struggled. And then Grayson Rodriguez, out of the gate, had some struggles. They had to send it back down. And so it left you wondering at the middle of the season, like, are they going to have enough pitching to get to the end of the season? Like, it felt like they were going to limp into the season. And the job that Chris Holt, who was their pitching coach at the time, did, and Mike Elias, obviously, with the depth of the pitching and the way their bullpen was set up and the way Brandon Hyde, handled the pitching there, they had plenty of it. I didn't like the way they handled it in the postseason. That's those are just one-offs and two-offs that we get to. You and I have evaluated for a dozen years, like the sense of urgency in the postseason. It has to be there. First time you're there, sometimes the manager, doesn't see it quite like that. He's really talented and really good. He'll learn from that and get, and be different and better the next time. But it is remarkable that all of the young talent that they acquired all hit at about the same time. And they are set up. Their system is deep. Their top 8 guys and their prospects are all, I think, impactful guys. And so, they don't have a ton of pitching in that group, so they're going to have to go supplement it with free agents, starting pitchers and that sort of thing. But yeah, they're set up to have this door open, kind of like what Houston had in that period when AJ Hinch first took over. About 15 area right after, right when Jeff Luhnow was operating there. And by the way, Elias was their scouting director at the time, so I think this is going to be a lot of fun. This is the start of a lot of excellent baseball in Baltimore.
Nothing against, look, Flaherty. I get why they did it. I don't think they aimed high enough in general, looking at that deadline, and pounced, right? I don't want to get into the prospects are cool, but when you get a chance to get a parade, that's when it's valuable, right? To put that pedal down. Now you look at this free agent offseason, we haven't heard much about them. Are they being aggressive enough about the here and now? We all know about the future. We all know about how it's laid out for years to come. Do you think that the Orioles are doing enough to push the pedal on the here and now when you look at the way that they've handled the offseason?
So here, it's a really good point. Here's what I know is their GM is aggressively pursuing starting pitching on the trade market. There's only a couple guys out there, and Dylan Cease is the name that pops up a lot in Baltimore. Conversations with Jerry Dipoto in Seattle. Jerry's always willing to trade, especially if he can get back an offensive piece. He has a depth of starting pitching. Now he just made a trade for Robbie. Traded Robbie Ray, and he got back Anthony DeSclafani. And I had him on my show the other day, Jerry, and didn't sound like they're going to move any young pitching. But the one team or two teams that could convince him to trade one of those starters is the Orioles with their young prospects and their young position players. So I wouldn't rule out there, but right now, Dylan Cease is their I think main target. They have financial constraints that's added there by their owner, by the ownership there, the Angelos sons, John Angelos in particular, that makes it a little more difficult to imagine that they're going to be signing the Jordan Montgomerys and the Blake Snells, the two high-end free agents that are out there right now. But I still think they have a move in them before spring training for a top starting pitcher.
Teoscar Hernandez, the latest to go to the Dodgers, 1 for 23, I guess it was. Obviously, we know Yamamoto and Ohtani and deal to bring in Glasnow, and the list goes on and on and on. I got kind of two on here, but let me start with the first one because it gets asked so many times, and hear so many fans and see on social media. It's bad for the game. It's terrible for the game. They're ruining the game. They have to be stopped and all of these sort of things. Normally, back in my lifetime as a fan, forget about just covering it 20 years, normally people in the front offices of other teams would be saying and thinking things like that, and the fans wouldn't. It's really interesting. So now I want to go reverse. The fans, a lot of them who are not Dodger fans, think somehow this is very bad for the game, Duke. Is this bad for the game? And do the Dodgers need to be stopped? I mean, how much of an issue is this right now?
Well, I think that the disparity in payrolls is always year after year a question that gets debated, right? The disparity between the haves and the have-nots, the ownership, even at the ownership level, they argue about it. We discuss it. Players talk about it. Front office guys talk about it. It's like the huge elephant in the room. Oh, they have all this payroll. But as we've seen, the Mets are a classic example. And let's go to the top 5 payrolls even last year. Yankees, Mets, Padres, 3 of the top 5 didn't even make the postseason. And so there's no guarantee.
And we're terrible. The stories were awful.
All of them.
Of all three of them.
Awful, right? All of them. So there's no guarantee, as you know, of getting into the postseason. Does it give you a better chance? Of course it does. But the crash and burn is also there, the factor. And that's what we saw last year. And we see it time and time again. And almost always at the World Series, the highest payroll team isn't there. That's not always the case. But, I mean, more times than not, it's been, so does it help to be even in the top 10? Yes, it does. Do we see that play itself out over the last few years? It does. But I think that because of our sport and the great, I think, equalizer is the way the postseason is added, the way that it's structured. If you have that good, that bye, and you have 4 days off, right now we've seen, and I think most of it's in the hitters' heads, but the hitters don't feel like they feel like they've lost more of their timing. They've lost an edge because the sport is a day-to-day one. And we saw last year, right? The Rangers, wild card team, Arizona, wild card team. They're sitting there at the World Series. And we've seen that a fair amount going back to when the Giants and the Royals, and teams like that were, we're getting into the World Series. So I think it's something we have to obviously keep an eye on. We'll never get, I don't think, we'll ever get a salary cap in our sport. Like it just, Shohei Ohtani's record number is another reason why we won't. Like it's incredible, right? $700 million. I don't care what the present day value is. No one talks about present day value. They get $700 million. They're paying them. So it's like
it's right, $700 million. Yeah,
it's 700. Let that number continually sink in, right? I can't even believe it. That's why we'll never have a salary cap in my mind. So, what's the alternative? I think these smaller market teams, the way the Orioles do it, the way Tampa does it, the way Cleveland has done it, is to just really continue to build up their player development system and do it differently. And there are ways to win, I think, at the major league level that way.
I got one more, then I'll get a Ravens pick from you on their Super Bowl run. We'll see. You mentioned Ohtani. I go back to the day that he signed, and one thing I kept saying, and speaking of things repeated over and over that got to sink in, if somebody would ask me 5 years ago, will anybody during Mike Trout's career get paid more than him? I would have said no. I would have said either he'll get up to get a new contract. Nobody better than Mike Trout. Shohei Ohtani in 2 less years, almost $300 million more than Mike Trout. That's absurd. But it lends me to think about this. I thought last year's handling at the deadline by the Angels was the worst handling of any trade deadline that I've seen in my 20 years covering the game, or probably my lifetime. They got nothing for Ohtani. The reasoning of it, the changing of the mind of Artie, who didn't even win the team 2 weeks before that, and then holding on to him. How do you trade Mike Trout? How do you sit there and watch what the Dodgers are doing down the road-ish, because we know it takes forever on the 5 freeway? But you're watching Ohtani, Yamamoto. They're going to be on TV, the Dodgers, Duke, every 5 seconds. They're going to be the stars of the show that they win. And you're now nobodies with Mike Trout, once again, like Tom Hanks in Castaway, looking for Wilson. We have to sit here in this sport and watch Mike Trout now stranded forever. I mean, if you're sitting there with the Angels, yes, are you more about trading Mike Trout than we're hearing? Because right now, you tell me if I'm wrong, it seems like, forget about this offseason, I know he's not moving, but it seems like there's no plan to ever move Mike Trout. And I don't understand if they're going to get better ever if they don't trade Mike Trout.
Yes, I love your analogy. I'd love to see Mike Trout with the Tom Hanks beard someday. I don't think we'll ever see that. Right. It's a great, because
he's just as lonely. He's just as lonely.
He is just as lonely, and he wants off that island. But I do think that the hard part. Here's the hard part. And he has expressed his frustration. Trout has with his health. He's had health issues the last couple of years where he hasn't played full seasons. What team is giving up the prospects it would take to get Mike Trout and taking on all of that money for the back half of Mike Trout? Maybe there's somebody out there. I don't know if there is. And it has to be a fit. Mike has to want to go there. Okay? He has a complete no trade clause. You have to convince the owner to do it, which we know it's not likely. Like, he wouldn't even trade Ohtani in his prime last year. So how is he going to trade Trout at this point, with the best player that we've seen in our generation until Ohtani came along? So, like, all of those things being said, I think it would take Trout to go into the front office and go into ownership and actually demand a trade. It's and maybe the time to do that is he puts up a full season, gets him back into the MVP consideration. He's a finalist, or maybe even wins the MVP. He probably wouldn't win the MVP next year because I don't think the Angels are going to beat strong. But let's say he puts himself into that final 3, then he goes to the ownership and said, "Listen, now you can get value for me. Please trade me. Do right by me and move me." That's the only way I could see it happening.
Your Ravens are, in my opinion, they're the best team in the AFC for sure.
Yes.
It's either them or the version of the Niners outside of the game where Purdy threw 4 picks. Remember offhand who they were playing a week or two ago, where it looked like those look like the best teams to me. Yeah,
Yes.
but
Yes.
it's against you. Yes,
Yes.
they look
Yes.
like the best teams. I mean, that to me looks like a rematch waiting to happen. Maybe Dak. I mean, I don't like the Cowboys, but his story you got to admire because everybody crapping on him.
Yep.
How disappointed will you be if they don't win the Super Bowl? Like, has this become like a now
Oh.
they have to because they clearly are the best team? Where are you on that?
Yeah, you know my house, and it's full of Ravens fans, and they have been asking for the last 3 weeks, can I get Super Bowl tickets? It's in Vegas. Uh, they are putting a lot of pressure on me to come up with Super Bowl tickets. And here's the issue. So last time the Ravens were in this position, they're the number one seed in the AFC. I gave them opportunities to go to a postseason game. We had lined up two postseason home games with a bye, and then so my youngest, Lindsay, she says I'm going the first game. The other two said I'm going to wait for the AFC Championship game. We never got to the AFC Championship game. We lost to them. It was one and done. So since we've been in this situation, I have a more measured optimism this year. But I agree with you. I think they're the best team. They've shown they were the best team, and they beat what they did to the Dolphins. They undressed the Dolphins, and they beat the Niners in San Francisco. So I feel like they have shown that they're the number one team. But again, we got the playoffs now. So I'm excited for it, though.
You can get him at Jim Duquette GM on Twitter, X, if you will. I can't call it X, Twitter. You also can find him, of course, on MLB Network Radio all week long, SNY and well. Duke, appreciate you, buddy. Thanks so much for the time this morning. We'll chat again soon.
All right. Good to see you, buddy.
There he is, Jim Duquette. You can catch us. You too, my friend. He filtered all the time, anytime, Apple, Spotify, everywhere you get your podcast. See you next time. Presented by our good friends at Best.